YouTube user shockofgod has been pestering the internets recently with what he thinks is a very good question. Give me, that is Shock, proof and evidence that atheism is true and correct. Now, I could go into the usual argument that the question is itself invalid, that the question is logically inconsistent, but I would much rather try and address his question at face value, if only to shut him the hell up. So let's analyze this question, phrase by phrase. Give me. By this I assume he means demonstrate using evidence. Next phrase. Proof and evidence. Well, Shock, if you want both proof and evidence, you may be sadly mistaken. Evidence, as defined by Merriam-Webster's dictionary, is defined as something that furnishes proof, as in testimony, specifically something legally submitted to a tribunal to ascertain the truth of a matter. In other words, by requiring evidence, Shock is setting himself as a supreme judge on this matter, the tribunal of heaven. I thought there was a provision in the Bible prohibiting Christians from judging, or am I simply mistaken? Anyway, proof is defined as, on the same site, as a cogency of evidence that compels acceptance by the mind of a truth or fact. So notice, evidence requires proof and proof evidence. Odd. Shock would have you think these terms are mutually exclusive, but they are in reality the same thing. So for the purposes of this video, let us revise his statement to say this. Demonstrate, using evidence, that atheism is true and correct. Back to the original question to see if we can make it still better. The next phrase is that atheism. The standard definition of atheism is the lack of belief in a god or gods, namely, that there are no gods at all. Typically, Christians use the word atheism to denote what they see as the quote-unquote real atheism, or for everyone else, empirical rationalism. This theory says essentially this. Any statement attempting to assert something other than what is previously accepted must be accompanied by either physical evidence or compelling logic. To do less than this would be to fail this test. So when Shock says atheism, chances are he means empirical rationalism. But let's assume he knows what atheism is, a huge leap of logic, and take his statement at face value. So now his new statement reads, demonstrate using evidence that a lack of belief in gods is true and correct. The last phrase, true and correct, is really tautology. Truth is the state of being correct for all observers. Correctness is the state of conforming to known truth. So what he really means is pretty vague, but let's assume for the sake of finishing this video, that Shock really means is conforming to fact. That is, the phrase truth and evidence equals conforming to fact. But really, this statement says the exact same thing as the evidence bit. Appropriate evidence is that which conforms to fact, or in other words, is factually correct. So we can really leave this entire bit out. So our real question reads, demonstrate that a lack of belief in any God has evidentiary basis. This question I can answer. Let's examine the claim of atheism. It is a negative assertion. It says that there is no evidence, and according to the laws of empirical rationalism, only evidence can change a default position. Without evidence, atheists will not budge. So in other words, the evidentiary basis for atheism is that there is insufficient evidence to abandon their position. Now, when Shock has been confronted with this point, he has defended his religion with the assertion that there is evidence and has pointed people to his website for resources about evidence for religion. Intrigued, I clicked through to his site and was appalled at what I saw. His site was either trying to sell me things or was offering theories from half-baked readings of the Bible as the only evidence of the validity of his theory. He was trying to use the Bible to prove the Bible. Here's the real Shockofgod. He's got nothing. So Shock, your statement is answered. You have no credible independent evidence that your claims are true. Not only that, but the theories you offered as evidence are not only demonstrably false, but are such poor quality that they are ridiculous. And that's why people become atheists. They see that the faith that they have taken for granted is based on selective readings of a Bronze Age storybook. So here's my challenge to Shock. Offer evidence from a non-biblical source, including any interpretation of the Bible reflecting natural events. No, you cannot use Noah's flood. Offer evidence from a non-biblical source that your God is correct. The only further limitation is that the evidence must not be of a sort already disproven or discarded. If you can't do this basic activity, you will retract your question and stop making videos on the subject. That's right. Put up or shut up.